PA is one of over 30 states using the IAIABC National Standard for EDI Claims Reporting. The IAIABC, otherwise known as the International Association for Industrial Accidents, Boards, and Commissions, was founded in 1914 and provides information and education on workers' comp policy, regulation, and administration. It works to improve and clarify laws, identify best practices, develop and implement standards, educate, and provide a forum for jurisdictional and industry members to collaborate. They facilitated the creation of and own the license for the EDI code we currently use and work with states to develop future incarnations of the national standard. The national standard, aka the EDI code, requires that certain fields be mandatory and the state makes other fields mandatory. However, the state ultimately determines which codes to use and identifies any special circumstances we may have for that code. This information is relayed to claim administrators via use of several IAIABC-driven tables. These tables tell the adjuster the triggers for each event, aka transaction type, the data elements needed in each transaction, and the order in which the transactions are expected. The tables are the event table, which details the transactions which are expected for each claim event. In addition, if a form is due, the event table lists which form as well as to whom the form is sent. The element table. This table provides instructions on the specific data fields which are required in order for each transaction from the event table to be considered acceptable. The edit matrix. There are a lot of tabs on this table, and each one provides information on the edits which will be applied to the transactions and data elements in the prior tables. The implementation guide lays out rules and provides an explanation on topics needing additional information. The EDI error code description. It describes the cause of specific rejection types as well as provides details on how to troubleshoot and correct the issues. Once a transaction is received by WCIS, the Workers' Compensation Automation and Integration System, it's reviewed for the items nationally required, the elements that are required for PA, and the sequencing. If a transaction meets these standards, then it's considered accepted, a TA or transaction accepted. If it fails to meet these standards, then it's rejected, a TR or transaction rejected. The claim administrators receive an AC, an acknowledgement report, back from the system to let them know whether the transaction TA'd or TR'd. We'll go over these tables a little bit more in detail later. Peggy, go ahead and advance. Peggy? Thank you. Just to level set, I thought I'd start with a couple of definitions. As many of you know from a recent data call, there are two types of EDI filers. There are trading partners, and then there are claim administrators. Both of these organizations are responsible for administrating claims, but only one of these types of claim administrators is submitting EDI to Pennsylvania, either on their own behalf or additionally on behalf of other claim administrators. Peggy? Trading partners may submit EDI via only one method in Pennsylvania. The methods are either the web portal or flat file. Web portal is free of charge and it's used most predominantly by claim administrators with smaller claim counts. It has the advantage of including sequencing and on-screen editing to allow for faster, more efficient, and more accurate filings for each manual entry versus other data entry systems. However, the downside is that each transaction is done individually and requires manual input, which can be time-consuming. Flat file allows companies to submit batches of transactions that are auto-generated within their system. Claim adjusters then don't have to enter the data twice. There are two kinds of flat filing companies, direct filers and those who pay to use a transaction partner or a middleman, a vendor, to submit their transactions. Many flat filers have automated systems where actions they take, like beginning, modifying, stopping payments, they all cause their system to automatically submit a transaction. All flat filers must have sequencing and data-based edits built into their systems to reduce rejections so they can pass the mandatory testing with BWC. All filers with PA, regardless of filing method, are required to submit documentation to BWC to let us know their chosen method of submission contact information, and other related details so we can best manage EDI submissions, troubleshooting, and responses to inquiries. This documentation is currently called the Trading Partner Agreement Packet and consists of 2 to 5 paper forms filed by your EDI and claims management team. However, beginning next year, this process will be automated within WICAS so that the trading partner's annual recertification can be done quickly and painlessly. All information previously supplied by your leadership will be there for your review, and you would only need to make any applicable changes and recertify. You'll even receive an annual reminder when the recertification period begins on July 15 through August 15. Just as a note, though, only one submission method is allowed. Claim administrators choose their submission type and then must utilize only that submission type. If the claim administrator wishes to switch to another submission method, they must notify BWC 30 days prior to the changeover. Sequencing and data errors are very common for those users who have utilized more than one submission method. Therefore, we highly recommend against it. If you want to prevent rejections, missed deadlines, and the potential for creating forms or claim statuses you may not have wished to create, please avoid double submission methods. Peggy? Here's an additional definition for you. A transaction partner, or one of those EDI middlemen we just discussed, is an organization that's met BWC's requirements to accept claim transactions from trading partners to then send to BWC. Trading partners should choose a transaction partner that best suits their needs if they choose to utilize one. Becky? Yep. If a company's submission method is web portal, adjusters may log directly into WCAS to submit EDI on the dedicated data entry screen. Adjusters should be aware of their company's submission method and should not use the web portal if they use a flat file submission method instead. Peggy? The data elements captured through the web portal do directly correspond to all EDI Release 3 claims data elements, and they don't receive an acknowledgement if they use the web portal, but they receive an equivalent. They would receive an on-screen real-time confirmation. And if there's a form solution form, so an NCP, NTCP, NCD notice stopping, or an LIBC 90 or FROI, there will be a hyperlink to take them directly to the form on the claim itself. Peggy? Simply put, an MTC is a transaction, and it relays claim level events such as initiating a claim, beginning payments on a claim, modifying, denying, or suspending benefits on a claim, etc. Peggy? When submitting EDI, adjusters should ensure forms and EDI are submitted both timely and concurrently. Adjusters should know which type of EDI to submit, so FROI or SHROI, and which of the applicable MTCs of those two. Populate all required data fields. Most of those data fields that are required are done so because of statutory requirements, such as, say, for example, on an NCP, you want to include your average wage and your compensation rate. So those requirements are directly related to things you'll need to use on your form solution forms. Also, adjusters should be prepared to quickly and accurately triage any and all errors. Peggy? Thank you. The next few slides contain additional information on the tables we've previously defined. Again, these tables are the EDI guide for adjusters. It allows them to determine what EDI submit, what data fields to include on that EDI, and what edits will be applied to those EDI transactions. For many of these, the FROIs and SHROIs are split out, so be sure you're reviewing the correct places on each table. Next slide. The event table, it tells you what events to report, what triggers that transaction, when the transaction is due. So, for example, for your FROI within 7 days or 48 hours. And then also it tells you what paper forms have to be sent and to which parties. So, for example, when you're suspending due to a return to work and you're using a suspend mod, it'll tell you within 7 days. Next slide. The specific data fields which are required in order for each transaction to accept are found on the element table. As you can see from the chart, it does have some codes on it, and there is, in fact, a kind of a key for how you would read that chart. Peggy, next slide. On the edit matrix, there are several different tabs, and each tab describes information on specific edits that will be applied. The first tab is the DN error message tab, and it contains the standard edits and error messages. The next tab is the value table, and that lists the Bureau's acceptable code values. There's a match data table, which describes which data elements will be used to determine if the information matches an existing claim or if a new claim must be created. A population restrictions table has a list of the restrictions applied to each of the data elements. Basically, it tells you when you can't use those particular codes and why. And then there's a sequencing table, which describes how the Bureau will apply sequencing edits and the order in which specific events are expected to be reported. Next slide. Of special note, the implementation guide has information on a wide variety of things. It is really your all around intro document and is a must pin item for EDI folks when they're on the website. It has information on FEIN and SSN formatting. It has definitions such as those we've used today. It has key data on the differences between mildly similar transaction types like the SHROI CA, the SHROI CB, and the SHROI RE. Thank you. There are two rules of thumb when reviewing your transaction acknowledgements. Read the acknowledgement text to ID the full error reason. And if you don't understand the issue, reach out to BWC. In other words, don't resubmit until you have a correction. That's very important. We'll say it again a couple more times throughout this presentation, but again, don't resubmit until you have it corrected. When an adjuster submits a FROI transaction to WCIS, they're adding interested parties to a claim, if the claim doesn't already exist anyway. The system uses the FEIN or combination of FEINs as the identifier for all organizations like the insurer, TPA, and employer. If the employer FEIN isn't in WCIS, the EDI transaction will need enough information to create a profile to add to the claim. So this is why the employer address fields, full legal name of the company, paying workers' salary are important data elements to include when submitting EDI transactions. However, FEINs in the Claim Administrator FEIN and Insurer FEIN fields must match a licensed insurer or registered TPA in order for the transaction to accept. Adjusters may verify if the entity is licensed in Pennsylvania by reviewing the list of bureau codes from the Workers' Compensation Insurance Search Form page under Resources at www.dli.pa.gov/EDI. A great reference guide for adjusters to use when populating FEINs is the FEIN guide on the Bureau's EDI webpage. It tells the adjuster how the insurers, TPAs, and employers on the interested party tree will be populated. When associating an existing claimant profile, WCIS matches the SSN and the first three letters of the first name. If they match, the profile is added to the claim, and WCIS uses the EDI transaction data to update the remaining data on the profile. If there's no existing profile in the system, WICUS requires the date of birth, SSN, full legal name, and address of the injured worker to create a profile. Please note, if an injured worker has no SSN or refuses to provide an SSN, you must reach out to the Bureau to get a placeholder SSN. This number, the WCID, is called a jurisdiction assigned ID in EDI parlance. The jurisdiction ID, DN0154, is used in place of the SSN. When you receive a placeholder from BWC, you must use Employee ID Type Qualifier Code of A. It distinguishes it from a Social Security, which has Employee ID Type Qualifier Code S. Most of you will have this already coded into your system, but just make sure that you're picking the correct options. Note, it is prohibited for claim administrators to use proprietary placeholder identifiers. We will only accept those placeholders assigned by us. If there's an existing profile in WICUS under an FEIN, the name of the company and the profile will be associated to the claim. If there's no existing profile, the EDI you submit can create an employer profile. A FROI 02 cannot be used to amend the name of the employer on an existing profile. So if you determine there could be a discrepancy, you must reach out to BWC via a customer service ticket for us to review the profile. However, other data can be changed, such as the SSN or claimant address or claimant last name. EDI is the method by which the WICUS claim status is updated and is how most EDI sequencing is derived, coded, and edited. This, along with being a match to a form, which is also in a specific statutorily driven order, is one reason why PA editing is very sequencing heavy and why it's so important that you pay attention. As mentioned on the previous slide, EDI is the method by which the WICUS claim status is updated and is how most EDI sequencing is edited. So on this slide, we've provided some information on what each WICUS status means. There are other less prevalent rejections, such as a SHROI CA or CB rejecting on a claim on which no indemnity is currently being paid and therefore shouldn't be amended without a reinstatement first, or a SHROI RB submission on a claim where indemnity was never suspended. But these, like most common rejections we've discussed, are all ones you can find in our reference documents. There are several main reference documents, as seen on this screen, for sequencing. There's the Relaxed Rules sequencing document, which details what pre-status must be on a claim in order for a specific transaction type to accept. There's the Claim Status Reference Sheet, which details what will happen both to the status and what form, if any, will generate if you submit a specific MTC with specific data elements and conditions. There's the Form Solution Form to Transaction Guide, which details how each form solution form, the NCP, NCD, and TCP and notice stopping are generated. We'll go over that a little bit more in detail later. The filing rules for EDI. So as we've mentioned, it's very much in line with our statute. So if you use the same rules for your matching forms as you do for your EDI, you'll know when to file the forms, what to file on the EDI, and you'll know that the EDI is a direct match to that form. For example, the FROI, formerly known as the Employer's Report of Injury, is due within 48 hours of a fatality or 7 days for the loss of a day, turn, or shift. For lost time claims, a form accepting or denying the injury is required within 21 days. If you temporarily accept, you have 90 days to investigate. All of these claim events have matching forms and therefore matching EDI transactions. As a note, you must file a FROI to establish a claim. It is the basis upon which any form is built. Although there's no requirement to file on a medical-only claim, if you wish to issue such a form, like an NCP or NTCP for medicals, a FROI must be filed first to establish the claim to which that form would be associated. Standard does seem to indicate that a FROI is required before any SHROI must be filed, and SHROIs are how you issue both the NCP and the NTCP, hence why it would need to be filed first. So EDI does eliminate the four most commonly filed forms from having to be filed by paper. There are still, however, other forms required by Pennsylvania law to be submitted to the Bureau. For example, the ones you see on the screen, like the Statement of Wages, the agreements, the LIBC 336 and 337, the notices of suspension and modification, all of those have to be filed with the Bureau. For specific form requirements, please do refer to our implementation guide. It does have a section, section 2.2, that discusses which forms are still required to be submitted to Pennsylvania. Paper forms are still to be sent to the claimant for all transactions by the claim administrator. As we've said before, your statutory requirements have not changed. Written notice to the employee has not changed just because of EDI. It is still required. Remember, paper forms don't update the claim status and therefore must be submitted concurrently with an EDI transaction. One example of those forms is the suspend mod. We keep saying that timely filing rules haven't changed. What's changed is only how you report the same information you previously reported. Again, that 751 is a clear example. This form follows an NCP or an agreement, i.e., it's a claim that's been in compensable status, and it's used to either suspend or modify benefits due to a return to work. The 751 must be filed within 7 days of the suspension or effective date. Note that this form may not be used to cease temporary payments under a temporary notice. Temporary payments may only be ceased by an NCP or an agreement or a stopping notice with an NCD. This form may be prepared by the adjuster within WCIS from the Actions tab. Once the 751 is prepared, you will immediately be taken to the Documents and Correspondence tab, where you may view the form you just created. From there, you would print it, sign it, date it, send it to the injured worker, and of course, upload the final signed form to the Actions tab of the claim. Alternatively, you may prepare it outside the system, but then you have to sign it, date it, send it to the injured worker, and of course, upload it to the signed form to the Actions tab of the claim. For additional information on the form, you may refer to section 121.17, subsections C and E. When we talk about forms filing, the most important tab of the claim for handling forms is the Actions tab. This is where you upload your agreements, the suspend mod that you just finished doing in your generation feature. It's where you view the form solution forms you generate with your accepted EDI transactions, where you prepare the suspend, you generate the statement of wages. You get the feeling here. This is a very important tab. If the form you need to upload, though, is not in the drop-down list on the Actions tab, it is likely because it was replaced by EDI for the Bureau filing purposes. Again, see the implementation guide for that full list. However, if you still wish the official Bureau file to have record of the form you've sent to the injured worker, and it isn't on the Actions tab list, you may upload it to the Documents and Correspondence tab. When you upload to the Documents and Correspondence tab, you would use a Miscellaneous Document tab, and you will want to add a document description so all parties can easily identify the identity of the uploaded document. But caution here, the Documents and Correspondence tab has a preview of the upload grid to let you see what you've added in case you need to change the description. Once you've determined everything looks good, you should then click on the Submit button, which is underneath the grid. That ensures the form is saved to the claim and viewable by all parties. The Documents and Correspondence tab is also where you can view any forms filed prior to WCIS Go Live and all claims correspondence that has been mailed to the parties. Next slide. Thank you. It is important to note that only EDI can amend the claim details, such as the main interested parties, the claim status, and the benefit information. Although litigation and appeals occur on only a fraction of the overall claims in the system, the claim administrator is still expected to submit EDI to match what the workers' comp judge ordered or what the WCAB or Commonwealth Court opined. If a decision or opinion awards, modifies, or suspend benefits, or if they approve a compromise and release of benefits, then the administrator should submit the appropriate EDI as laid out in the event table to match the decision or opinion. When the decision is rendered by the judge, it is up to the parties to fulfill that judge's order. The judge's decision will not impact the status of the claim because when the judge is ordering the carrier to perform the action, it is to do so that it matches the decision. When the adjuster performs the required action, they must also submit the EDI so that the system reflects their compliance with that order. EDI submitted by the claim administrator is the only way to update the WICA status and claim details. Just a note though, all transactions matching a decision or opinion must include the award order date field, which is the date that the decision was circulated. In addition, if the circulated decision was a confirmation of a compromise and release, then the SHROI PY transaction should also have a lump sum payment settlement code and often a benefit type code of 5XX. XX in EDI just means fill in the blank. There's a whole bunch of 500 series codes. Just another note on the LIBC 12. This new reference document provides insight into matching EDI for each form activity, because as you know, EDI is required for agreement forms and the suspend mod, so this LIBC 12 will help you determine which transaction is appropriate for each type of activity on each of those forms. Next slide, please. Thank you. Form solution is the method by which an adjuster uses their accepted EDI transaction to generate the NCP and TCP, notice stopping, and NCD. Additionally, you may now generate the LIBC 90, the FROI. Once generated, please don't forget to mail the form to the injured worker. It is still a requirement. There are 4 batches, 9 a.m., 2 p.m., 7 p.m., and 11:59 p.m., in which an adjuster can send their transactions to best take advantage of your filing deadlines. As a tip, watch your status so you know when you're generating a new form with your EDI versus when you've gone beyond the point in a claim where a form solution form is applicable. So for example, if you've already suspended a claim, you've now moved into agreement land or judge land. You're past an NCP land. There are a few key documents I do want to call out for adjusters. The first is the O2 mapping document. It is used by adjusters to identify which data element or which piece of information, which when updated may be used to generate a new or amended version of a form. The DN mapping document. There are 4 DN mapping documents. These documents identify the specific form field's EDI DN mapping for each of the form solution forms. For example, it identifies which EDI denial reason code relates to each of the NCD denial options. For form solution, though, obviously, the number one most important document is the form solution form to transaction guide, which identifies for the adjuster the transactions which can be used to generate each of the form solution forms. Essentially, between these 3, the adjuster can ID which MTCs to use to generate the forms, what DNs are required to fully populate the form, and how to amend the data, i.e. these are the tools the adjuster uses to drive their EDI form solution car around the EDI claims block. Next tab. The next 3 slides are screenshots of that document, that LIBC 146 form solution form to transaction guide, which is found on the Bureau's EDI webpage. This document, again, provides the adjuster the list of the transactions they may use to generate a form solution form and the key data fields they will need to know in order to differentiate. Please note, no forms will be generated when the award order date or a lump sum settlement code field are populated, as this would indicate that an agreement is reached and it is being submitted on the claim or a judge's decision has been rendered. However, if the adjuster accidentally applies one of those two codes to the transaction, thus suppressing their form solution form, a SHROI O2 transaction without the award order date or lump sum settlement code may be used to back out the error, generate the form, and advance the claim while still in that form solution status. Next slide. Thank you. You'll no doubt notice that the same transactions are listed here for the temporary as you saw on the NCP list. That's because the claim type code and agreement to compensate code are the determining factors used by the adjuster to tell the system if he or she wants an NTCP or an NCP, and also if he or she is trying to generate a medical only versus regular form. Although these are the transactions which may be used to generate the NCD and notice stopping, I do want to point out a couple of things. The first is that the NCD is applicable if the claim is temporary, FROI, or no FROI. What this means is that once you've accepted a benefit, the system does not allow you to deny the benefit that you've just accepted. Using this logic, if you have already accepted liability for a claim, but at the same time only medical bills were applicable, and then the injured worker begins to lose time and you wish to issue an NTCP to investigate the lost time to determine if it's related to the accepted injury, you may still do so. However, since you've accepted the medical portion of the claim, a full denial transaction, a SHRIO 4, can no longer be used. Therefore, this is the only instance where a SHROI PD, a partial denial, may be used to garner a notice stopping and NCD. In all other uses of the PD, the adjuster is generating a medical only form, such as an NCP or an NTCP. There is limited time in Pennsylvania for the agreement to compensate code of W, since W is used exclusively for an NTCP. I want to point out a couple of things for the temporary. The first is that the 90-day begin on date for a medical only NTCP is the date of injury. And the second is that the 90-day begin on date for an indemnity NTCP as at the initial date disability began. These dates are immovable. This, as we suggested with the sequencing, can be addressed by ensuring you place limitations on the agreement to compensate code of W based on how far out you are from the 90-day begin on date that we've just provided. It can be either a systematic enhancement or a tickler the adjuster uses to track these claims. Again, it's important that you are paying attention to your 90 days. So we're trying to assist with making sure that you understand what you need to do in your system so that you're fully able to keep control of your claim. Just as a note, again, an award order date for agreements, workers' compensation judge decisions only, and the agreement to compensate code of W should not be in the same transaction together. You will never have a judge awarding benefits under a temporary, so these codes really just don't go together in Pennsylvania. There are 3 claim type codes currently accepted in Pennsylvania. Claim type code of I is for indemnity claims. In general, a SHROI IP, a SHROI AP, EP, RB, ER, CA, AB, CB, RE, and SX, and yes, that really is a mouthful, are required to have claim type code of I because these maintenance type codes, these MTCs, are used only for lost time claims. The SHROI FN could have a CTC of I if it followed the previously mentioned transactions. Claim type code of M is for medical only claims, which have never previously had any indemnity benefits on them. Claim type code of B is for became medical only. That means that it was previously indemnity that was reported on a SHROI for temporary, but now the claim is only medical going forward. The SHROI PD will always have either claim type code M or claim type code B, depending on whether indemnity was previously paid on a temporary. We do see a lot of claim type code rejections for SHROI 2 transactions when you haven't yet made lost time payment. In other words, you don't have a benefit segment. You should never use the SHROI-02 to stand in for any other MTC, as the SHROI-02 is only used to amend previously submitted data. In this case, changing from medical to lost time means that you're adding lost time payments. If you're reporting the claim is for lost time, you should be telling us this basic information on the payments that you're making. This is also a reason why the FROI-02 may never be used to amend the claim type code once a SHROI is on file, because changing claim type code means you're changing the benefits being paid. Just as a note, the first reporting of lost time benefits on a claim must be reported on a SHROI IP, EP, or AP. A SHROI-02 is only used to amend previously submitted EDI transactions or previously submitted SHROI claim data and is never to stand in for another MTC. When we review errors, we often see a lot of transactions are rejected multiple times. However, filers can save money by reviewing rejections daily to make sure you are correcting the errors prior to resubmission. Many companies do the following things in order to ensure that they are not resubmitting in error. They have reports to regularly review rejections, many on a daily basis. That way, they can ensure a speedier correction to move their claims forward. Excuse me. They have a system hold on automatic resubmissions of an MTC. Give me 1 second, I'm so sorry. Apologize, froggy. They have a system hold on automatic resubmissions of an MTC prior to any value change. Basically, if your staff haven't yet fixed the issue, your system shouldn't automatically be resending the transaction. If you don't understand a rejection, we do have a lot of self-help guides, such as the PA EDI Error Code Description Guide, which walks you down every type of rejection, what causes it, and how to fix it. If you still aren't sure, reach out to BWC. We have trained staff who can assist you with determining the cause of the rejection and to guide you on options for your next steps. Now that we've gone over how to maintain the claim, how, when, and where to file your statutorily required forms, and how to triage errors, there's only one other thing needed to wrap this up. We need to go over how you get the full record of a claim. So, requesting your records. It's very simple. From your dashboard, use the Quick Links option to access your records request dashboard. Click on the green Create Online Records Request bubble to submit a new request. Keep track of existing requests in the sortable pending records requests submitted online or available records request filed grids. Just some tips. Make sure you pick the correct designator for subpoena or records request. Make sure you keep your email up to date in WCIS, as this is where notifications will go when the response is available for your review. All eligible records requests should be submitted online in WCIS, and the only ones non-eligible are ones with a non-WCJ issued subpoena. Before we open for questions to go over the ones that have been submitted, I did want to ask if Leah or Marianne wanted to add anything. Okay. All right, so we do have some questions in the chat. The first one that I'm seeing is there any consideration given to eliminating the use of paper filings and solely using EDI as a means of filing? Filing via paper and EDI is cumbersome, and there's a great change of paper filings and MTCs not always flowing together. So Desiree, the answer to your question is that the statutory requirements do indicate that the forms are necessary, and the EDI requirements to maintain your claim in WCIS mean that you do need your EDI. Other than the 4-form solution forms and the FROI, most of the rest of them do require signatures. And so because they require signatures or some kind of certifications, they cannot be replaced. Right. See. The next question is, I need help with my FROI or SHROI errors. Is there a cheat sheet to help me out? Tracy, there are a lot of cheat sheets. I would recommend going to the Bureau's website. Derek is going to put that in the chat here in a second. But basically, for entry errors, I'm going to say the DN error table is probably your best bet. The edit matrix would be another additional good one. Colleen asks, will there be a more detailed training in the future than just an overview? Um, every company is more than welcome if they have specific needs to request training from the Bureau. Please reach out to us via customer service and we can go about seeing what sorts of individualized trainings we can provide for each company. Typically, what we do is we go over specific companies' common errors. Stacy, how would we go about filing the proper EDI forms to issue a notice stopping and accept the claim for medical only? This would be on a claim where we have issued an NTCP. So if you wish to issue a notice stopping off of a temporary notice, then it would depend on the pre-status of the claim. So for example, did you already accept medicals or is this just a straight NTCP and you've never had any NCPs on file? So if there's never been an NCP on file, then a SHROYO form may be used to issue your notice stopping and denial. And then of course you may follow with the appropriate EDI to issue your medical only form. Alternatively, the system does allow the adjuster the flexibility to make the determination if they just wish to issue their medical only NTCP or their medical only NCP, but that would not garner you that notice stopping that you've mentioned. Randa, is there an option to request previous Bureau documents, such as for a prior claim with a separate injury? Yes. Leah, do you want to answer this one? I think this is probably more in your wheelhouse. I think Leah's maybe muted. Yes, when you request records, if you have a signed authorization from the injured worker, then any of their claims can be provided to you. You just need to make sure to request any and all records. Karen Norris. Okay, why does EDI generate amended NCPs? All right, so we kind of briefly went over that FROY and SHROYO2 mapping document, but it's really important that adjusters have familiarity with that because when you issue a form using your EDI, so your form solution form, if you amend a field that is listed on that FROY and SHROYO2 mapping document, if you amend one of those fields, then you're going to be generating a new form solution form, for example, that amended NCP you mentioned. And you need to be aware of when you're generating it versus when you're not. All of the fields that are marked on that document as a yes are fields that appear on the forms themselves. So for example, you've increased your average wage. Well, because that's a field on an NCP, when you change the information, it of course changes the NCP itself. Of course, you would want that anyway because you want to have a document to notify the injured worker anyway. So that's important to note that whenever you have information that is on a form that changes, of course, you want to let the adjuster, of course, the adjuster wants to let the claimant know that. Okay, Barbara, two questions. First, the judge decision dates when, again, medical only and lost time. Barbara, I'm sorry to say I'm not entirely sure I completely am following your question. Um, so let's say do you mean the decision date itself, like the circulation date? That's the date you would use as your award order date? Or what do you do when the judge determines that the claim is liable for medical only and lost time? You submit your EDI to match it, and you would use an award order date, of course, the circulation date, to reflect that you're following that judge's decision. But Barbara, if I've missed that, would you please clarify in the chat? Cassandra Allen, please confirm that the 90 days on a medical only NTCP begins on the date of injury and not on the date of service. No, that is absolutely correct, Cassandra. The 90-day begin on date for a medical only NTCP does date back to the date of injury because medical bills are payable back to the date of injury. Armando, is there a cost for flat filing? Yes, it depends, actually, I should say. If your company uses the direct filing, we have very few of those folks, but we do have some. Their company does not pay the bureau or a middleman for the flat file. However, you do have to maintain EDI within your own system. So that could have a cost in terms of making sure your IT is able to keep up with code changes. But if you use a transaction partner, you would be paying a fee to that transaction partner. It takes all of the headache off of you. You don't have any IT overhead, but it does mean you do have to pay a cost to get your transactions to go through that transaction partner. A little on transaction partners is, again, they have edits built into their system, and they will apply those edits to you, to your claims, to your filings, to make sure that you are able to meet our requirements. So, for example, if X field is required on Y transaction and you don't have it, they'll send it back to you. It doesn't even hit us. And they'll say to you, hey, you messed up. You need to put this field on there. Cynthia Douglas, can you generate a notice stopping without filing a denial? No. Per the filing regulations under the Act, the notice stopping is a match with an NCD. Linda Abbott. Hello, if the adjuster needs to update the employer name or insurer carrier name, this cannot be done by Shroy. Can you please confirm the only way to update the name would be to call BWC? Okay, well, you cannot update the insurance carrier name ever. That's something that because these companies are licensed by the insurance department, anything that comes through, it has to have official paperwork. So if, say, a company does go through a legal name change, that paperwork goes through the insurance department, Pennsylvania Rating Bureau, and us before the name actually gets updated in WICAS. So the employer name, on the other hand, let's say you associated the wrong employer when you submitted your FROI transaction. Yes, a FROI 02 with an amended FEIN may be submitted. But the other option you have is, if the FEIN that you submitted is the correct one that your insured is giving you, reach out to the Bureau and we can do some verifications in our system. Is the SHROI only for updates of address and FEIN? So that's, I think you mean the FROI. The FROI is used to update the interested parties, a FROI 02 specifically, not a SHROI. Hello, if the adjuster needs, oh, okay, so it's the same question. What does SHROI mean? So a FROI, an F as in Frank, ROI, is a first report of injury. A SHROI, SROI, is a subsequent report of injury. Will there be another session in the future for those who are unable to attend today? So, Kara, the session is being recorded and it will be available on the Bureau's website soon. So it can be watched by anybody who was not able to attend today. So, Autumn, on slide 30, you indicated if the medical only was accepted, a SHROI 04 would reject. And I stated a PD could be issued. Just want to confirm why a PD. Would this deny the medical only that was accepted? Or if that point, the claim cannot be fully denied. So a SHROI 04 is always a full and complete denial of everything. And a SHROI PD is a partial denial. So if you've already accepted some part of the claim on an NCP or agreement, you cannot ever fully deny the claim ever. That's, once you've accepted something, you've accepted it. Now you have to pay on it. But if you, for example, had a medical only, you didn't really accept the indemnity. So our SHROI PD in Pennsylvania, the only PD reason code that we accept is we're denying indemnity in full, but we didn't deny medical, basically. So what it means is that it's reverting the claim. If you issue the PD after a medical only NCP, you're reverting the claim back to the medical only NCP. You're issuing your stopping and denial for that temporary lost time, and you're reverting the claim so that the medical only NCP is now back to being the star of the show. Okay, so we've seen difficulty filing NCP and TCP after a claim petition is filed. This has caused issue when a claim petition is filed very early after the injury. Is there some form suppression once a case goes into litigation? So no. Um, Andrew, I think we would probably need you to submit a customer service ticket on this one with some additional details. In truth, you should, on any claim that has open litigation, because EDI is sort of standalone, you should still be able to follow your normal sequencing. My thought is this is specific to either you're using, perhaps there's a problem, some other problem with the claim, like getting a match data to match up or what have you. For example, did you have a slightly different employer FEIN than the one submitted on the petition? Is the date of injury exactly the same? So it seems to me like this could be a mismatch of the data, or that you might have two different claims, in which case you would want to talk to the judge about those. When you have duplicative claims out there and the claim, one of them is in litigation, all of the information should go to a judge. The judge needs to make a determination on the correct information. Is the employer A or employer B? Is the date of injury A or B? So once that judge makes that determination, if you do need the claims to be combined, the judge can request that those claims be combined by reaching out to the Bureau. However, um, if it, we'd need to really look at the claims in question to determine what's going on and why you can't issue an NCP or NTCP. Again, it seems to me like it's specifically to match data or maybe a piece of data that you've included on your transaction and suppressed it. Okay, can you send a copy of this presentation? Peggy, Yolanda is asking if we can send a copy of the presentation. My understanding is it's going to be posted out on the Bureau website where people can go and collect it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Jonathan, if indemnity is suspended and then needs to be restarted because the injured worker goes back out of work, a SROI RB is needed. The award order start date is a required field. In this case, there is no award or order. The injured worker is just out of work again. What date should be used? Okay, so Jonathan, when the RB, if you look at our event table, is always a match to a form. And for this instance, that RB, I think it really depends on how the suspension came about. And if it's a suspension for most suspension reasons, the way to reinstate is going to be either a judge is going to have ordered the reinstatement or you'll have a supplemental agreement. If you have either of those, you have an award order date field. So that date would be I guess the counter signature date of the agreement and or the decision circulation date. Otherwise, what document are you using to send to the injured worker telling the injured worker that they are that you're reinstating benefits? Does witness statement go to the Bureau also? So a witness statement, we don't require that for Bureau purposes. However, if the claim is in litigation, the judge, I believe, does accept witness statements. I'm not positive of the intricacies, but they would be done as I'm guessing an exhibit. So you probably would need to make sure that's being submitted through the Office of Adjudication processes in WICAS. Okay. Linda, if the adjuster needs to update the employer name or insurance carrier, can't be done with a SROI. Can you confirm the only way to update the name would be to call the BWC? I swear I feel like we answered this question, but so a FROI 02 may be used to update some interested party data, but if you've confirmed that the FEIN that you're using for the employer name is correct, reach out to the Bureau, yes. Insurance carrier name isn't done on any EDI transactions. You can exchange one insurance carrier for another, but it's going to be dependent on the FEINs. Cassandra, however, if the claim is lost time, the 90-day begin on date is the first date of service. It's the initial date the disability began. That's a statutory requirement. Subsequent report of injury is to be used to notify the Bureau of payments or denial. Those are two of the uses, Anne Marie, but we do have additional uses. It can be used to notify the Bureau of a cessation of payments, a modification of payments, the end of the claim, change from one type of benefit to another. So, for example, from temporary total to temporary partial. So there are a lot of things for a subsequent report of injury. But yes, it does tend to revolve around benefits, whether they're being paid or not being paid. Uh, ah, Judge or Director Dorita, thank you very much. You are awesome. So Judge Dorita, or sorry, Director Dorita has answered Andrew. He says problems arise when litigation is started when the employer named in the petition is not the same that is on the file with data quality at the Bureau. So EDI filing generates a Bureau document, but the employer is misidentified in the petition, and never the twain shall meet. Well, not quite, but the WCJ needs to be made aware so the employer profiles can be merged. Sorry for the long winded answer. No, we loved your long winded answer. Please keep them coming. And by the way, it's not a long winded answer, it was a wonderful one. Lawrence Bray. If a temporary total disability payment is made and a FROI has been filed, what EDI transaction is then required? So um, I think for this one, we've got three possibilities for you. Generally speaking, the Troy IP, your Troy initial payment transaction for indemnity, is going to be the transaction that would be used to report that first payment of lost time. However, if the payment is the employer paying wages in lieu of compensation, it would be the Troy EP. And if a third party administrator, a TPA, has just acquired the claim, then it would be a Troy AP. So, Lawrence, it's one of those options, and you'll have to review the event table to figure out which one is most appropriate. Okay, Brenda asks, what is the LIBC 12 form and where do we find it? Brenda, you can find that on the Bureau website that Derek previously provided. And the LIBC 12 is basically a rundown of all of the matching transactions for each of the Bureau forms. So, for example, if you have a suspend mod, you're going to either suspend benefits due to a return to work or you're going to modify benefits due to a return to work. So for either of those two options, whether you're suspending or modifying, there's a matching EDI transaction, and the LIBC 12 explains what that matching EDI transaction is, and it provides a couple of tips, like for example, with those agreements using the award order date for one of the tips. Uh, Alexandra, will this slideshow be printable from Wikis? It's going to be available from the Bureau's website. All right, Linda, what document generates when a SHROI O2 is filed? Well, honestly, Linda, it's going to be dependent upon where you are, what status the claim is, and what data fields that you've updated. So, for example, if you have a claim that's in comp denied status and the controlling document is a NCD, you might get a new NCD. If you have a claim that's incompensable and the controlling document is an NCP, you might get an amended NCP. So the document that generates is really going to be dependent upon what status you are. If you're in a suspended status claim, you're not going to get a form solution form at all with your SHROI 02. I will say this, there is always a transcript form, an LIBC 91, that is populated in the system and available for your review for each and every SHROI transaction. Just like each and every FROI transaction has something called an LIBC 90, which is your FROI, your transcript for the FROI. You have a similar thing for the SHROI 02, but note that that SHROI 02 isn't to be used in exchange for an applicable regular form. Like you can't use the SHROI 02, the LIBC 91, instead of a supplemental agreement or a suspend mod. Vehicle injury, would we send Bureau auto insurance information also? The Bureau does not need that, no. All right, it looks like we are at time and we've run out of questions. I wanted to thank everybody today for joining us. I very much appreciate all of the questions. I'm glad we left exactly the right amount of time for them. If anybody has any additional questions you think of afterwards, please don't hesitate to submit a customer service ticket and or an email to the Bureau's resource account for the EDI section. That's ra-cmdedi at pa.gov. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.